We love a good laugh or an inspiring story. But today, I'm confronting the harsher side of life. From the plight of innocent kids to cruel experiments on animals and the hunger that leaves millions barely surviving, the world is filled with realities almost impossible to bear. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 sad facts about our world that you might wish you didn't know. 25. 2.8 billion people can't afford a healthy meal. It's pretty mind-blowing, but more than 800 million people worldwide go to bed with empty stomachs every night. We produce enough food to feed everyone, but somehow 1 in 11 people still end up hungry each day. Plus, about 2.8 billion can't even afford a decent meal. Even with all the advancement in food production, many, especially in developing countries, are still missing out on proper nutrition. Hunger goes beyond just having an empty stomach. It's a daily battle for survival, especially tough on kids. Things like climate change, COVID-19, rising food prices, and the war in Ukraine have only made it worse, throwing global supply chains into chaos and driving up costs for essentials like grain and fertilizer. 24. Around 9 million people die each year due to hunger. Roughly 9 million people lose their lives to hunger and hunger-related illnesses each year. Right now, the Integrated Food Phase Classification, or IPC, estimates that 1.33 million people around the globe are dealing with famine or similar conditions. It's tragic that half of all child deaths are tied to malnutrition. Unfortunately, progress against hunger has been slowing down for the past decade, especially in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, where undernourishment and child malnutrition rates are climbing due to bad diets, economic issues, and more natural disasters. 23. The slaughter of animals in labs. Every year, about 100 million animals, think rabbits, rats, and monkeys, go through painful, invasive experiments, all in the name of science. In Europe alone, that number is around 10 to 11 million. While some of these experiments can lead to medical breakthroughs, the ethical cost is huge. These animals often live in harsh conditions and endure extreme pain or even death. It raises an ongoing debate about whether this level of cruelty is really necessary or if we should be looking for alternatives. Some of these animals are specifically bred for research while others are taken from their natural habitats. I feel bad for these poor animals. They didn't sign up for this. 22. 250 million children are denied access to basic education. Education is a basic human right, but millions of kids around the world are still missing out. New data from UNESCO shows that the number of out-of-school children has jumped by 6 million since 2021, bringing the total to 250 million. Factors like poverty, war, and discrimination keep so many kids from going to school. Without an education, they're stuck facing a lifetime of limited opportunities and poverty. This cycle just keeps going as the next generation grows up without the skills to change their situation. 21. Thousands of species go extinct every year. Species extinction is happening faster than ever before. Thousands of animals disappear each year, mainly due to human activity. Deforestation, pollution, and climate change are wreaking havoc on ecosystems. Every species we lose takes away a vital piece of that delicate puzzle that keeps life on Earth going. The International Union for Conservation of Nature estimates that at least 38,500 species are at risk, and over 16,300 are considered endangered. The most endangered include rhinos, orangutans, and vaquitas, the smallest marine mammal in the world, with only 9 left. This extinction crisis is worrying. It's not just about the animals. It'll likely harm both us and the environment. 20. Every minute, 20 people are on the run. Every single minute, 20 people around the world are forced to leave everything behind: homes, families, memories, because of violence, war, or persecution. These refugees find themselves in unimaginable situations, escaping from the horrors of their past and heading into uncertain futures. As of May 2024, there are a record 120 million people forcibly displaced worldwide, marking the 12th year in a row that this number has gone up. The count of refugees and people needing international protection has reached 43.4 million, while the number of internally displaced persons is at 68.3 million. Almost 3 out of 4 refugees come from just 5 countries: Afghanistan, Venezuela, Syria, Ukraine, and Sudan. This ongoing crisis is one of the most heartbreaking issues we face today. 19. Slavery isn't dead. In a world where we like to think slavery is a thing of the past, millions of people are actually living in modern-day slavery. From forced labor in factories to sex trafficking and child labor, these individuals are caught in systems that exploit them. According to the global estimates of modern slavery, about 50 million people were living in modern slavery in 2021. Of those, 28 million were in forced labor, and 22 million were trapped in forced marriages. Women and children are especially vulnerable, losing their freedom, dignity, and often their lives. These statistics show that human trafficking and forced labor are still very real issues today. 18. More people are taking their lives. Suicide is the third leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds, with 726,000 people taking their own lives each year. There are also countless others who attempt the same. Each one is a tragedy that impacts families, communities, and entire countries, leaving long-lasting effects on those left behind. This isn't just a problem in wealthier countries. It's a global issue affecting all regions. In fact, in 2021, nearly 73% happened in low and middle-income countries. Mental health issues are often overlooked, misunderstood, or dismissed, and the stigma around seeking help makes it even harder for people to reach out. If you're in a tough spot right now with your mental health, please do not hesitate to seek help. It really matters. And I've said it before, I'm just a set of ears, I'm not a professional, but if you do need someone who will just listen, email me, mike@list25.com. I'll do my best to read it and respond, and I'm just a set of ears. Again, I'm not going to give you professional help. I'm not a medical professional, but if you just need someone to listen, let me be that for you. mike@list25.com. 17. 100,000 sea mammals are killed each year. Plastic pollution is wreaking havoc on our oceans, killing millions of marine animals every year. More than 1 million seabirds and 100,000 sea mammals fall victims to the trash we tossed into the water. On top of that, all baby sea turtles have plastic in their stomachs. These creatures often mistake plastic for food or get caught up in it, leading to slow and painful deaths. Currently, 700 marine species are facing extinction due to plastic. We are choking our oceans and destroying ecosystems that have thrived for millions of years. If we don't act now, the damage we do today will haunt future generations. And real quick, if you guys don't mind giving this a like, a share, comment, subscribe, it really helps the algorithm, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. All right, let's move on. 16. 1 in every 10 kids is involved in child labor. I've talked about children being deprived of education, but what's worse than that? Child labor. It's a global tragedy, with around 160 million kids working in dangerous conditions in factories, mines, and agriculture. That's 1 in nearly 10 children worldwide, so says the United Nations. Africa has the highest rates, with 1 in 5 kids involved in child labor, totaling around 72 million. Asia and the Pacific come in second, with 7% of all children and 62 million kids stuck in child labor. These children miss out on their childhood, education, and often their health. They endure dangerous working conditions that can leave them with lifelong physical and emotional scars. It's like we're living in 2 different worlds. Some kids have everything, and others are working just to survive. 15. Over 230 million endure genital mutilation. Female genital mutilation is a horrifying practice that affects over 230 million women around the globe. This brutal practice continues to harm millions of women and girls worldwide with no medical justification. Africa leads with over 144 million cases of this barbaric act, followed by Asia with more than 80 million, and the Middle East with around 6. FGM is often used to control women's sexuality, leading to devastating consequences, including physical pain, complications during childbirth, and long-term psychological trauma. Even though it's recognized as a violation of human rights, it's hard to wrap your head around how ingrained this practice is in some cultures. 14. 44 veterans die each day by suicide in the US alone. A study conducted between 1999 and 2010 found that about 22 veterans were dying by ending their own lives each day, essentially 1 every 65 minutes. But the situation has worsened. Now, around 40 to 44 veterans take their own lives every day in the US. The breakdown by age shows that 31% were by veterans aged 49 and younger, while a whopping 69% were by those 50 and older. These brave men and women who have served our country come home to find that the mental scars from war often go untreated. The impact of PTSD, depression, and inadequate mental health care is staggering. Just think about it. 44 veterans end their own lives every day. Despite their sacrifices, far too many veterans feel isolated, unsupported, and hopeless. Just to mention it, back in May 2019, President Trump signed an executive order called the Prevents Initiative to combat veteran suicide. Clearly that wasn't enough, as this national crisis needs more attention and urgent action. 13. 3.5 billion people globally live below the poverty line. Billions of people around the world struggle to meet their most basic needs, like food, shelter, and healthcare. Recent stats from the World Bank show that 8.5% of the global population, which is nearly 700 million people, live on less than $2.15 a day, which is the extreme poverty line for low-income countries. On top of that, 44% of the global population, which is around 3.5 billion people, get by on less than $6.85 a day, the poverty line for upper middle-income countries. Poverty traps people in cycles of hunger, poor health, and limited opportunities, leaving little hope for a way out. The gap between the rich and the poor is widening, and it's getting harder to overlook. 12. 38 million people in the US live in poverty. The United States is widely regarded as the richest country in the world. Yet, 37.9 million people, about 11.5% of its residents, live in poverty. Poverty isn't just about money. It impacts every part of life. Families often worry about losing their homes or not having enough to eat. Kids miss out on quality education, which limits their future opportunities. It is tough out there. Like I said, the divide between the rich and the poor is widening, and many Americans are nowhere close to living that American dream. 11. Around 12 million girls are married before the age of 18 each year. A study done in 2017 found that about 15 million girls are married before the age of 18 each year. Although the UN says the percentage of child marriages has dropped from 23% to 19% in the last decade, it's still a major problem. Currently, 12 million girls are married before they turn 18. Getting married as a child is a fundamental violation of human rights. These marriages often lead to early pregnancy, disrupted education, and limited opportunities. These girls lose their childhood and are forced into adult roles before they've had the chance to grow physically, mentally, or emotionally. The UN estimates that around 640 million girls and women alive today got married before turning 18. It's a harsh practice that keeps young girls trapped in poverty. 10. Over 250,000 child soldiers are fighting in armed conflicts around the world. While it's tough to get exact numbers, the UN estimates that around 250,000 children worldwide are being recruited to fight in armed conflicts, violating international law. Between 2005 and 2022, over 105,000 children were confirmed as being recruited and used by various warring parties. These groups exploit children, both boys and girls, not just as fighters, but also as scouts, cooks, porters, guards, and messengers. Many, especially girls, face gender-based violence as well. These kids undergo brutal training, are forced to commit horrific acts, and have their innocence stripped away. The trauma they face can last a lifetime, making it really difficult for them to reintegrate into society after the fighting stops. It's a humanitarian crisis that often flies under the radar. 9. Millions of children die from preventable diseases every year. A staggering 2.3 million children died in the first 20 days of life in 2022 alone. That breaks down to 6,500 newborn deaths every day, making up 47% of all child deaths under the age of 5. Overall, 4.9 million under 5 lost their lives that year, with pneumonia, diarrhea, and malaria being the top causes. These deaths are especially heartbreaking because they're often preventable. In many parts of the world, access to basic medical care is limited or completely missing, leaving children to suffer and die from illnesses that would be easily treatable in wealthier countries. 8. Tobacco claims 8 million each year. Every year, millions die from smoking-related illnesses like lung cancer, heart disease, and chronic respiratory conditions. Tobacco claims more than 8 million lives annually, including around 1.3 million non-smokers exposed to secondhand smoke. Around 80% of the world's 1.3 billion tobacco users live in low and middle-income countries. Nicotine is highly addictive, making it really tough to quit. and the damage it does to the body is severe. Guys, tobacco is no joke. It kills about half of the people who use it if they don't stop the habit. 7. 1 in 10 people worldwide suffer from a mental health disorder. According to the World Health Organization, at least 1 in 8 people around the world deal with a mental disorder. These disorders can really mess with thinking, emotions, or behavior. So, here are the facts. About half of all mental health issues start before the age of 14. Young people living in areas affected by conflict, natural disasters, and disease are especially at risk. Conditions like depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia impact lives every day, often in silence. If left untreated, these issues can lead to serious problems, including self-harm and taking their own lives. 6. 1/3 of all food produced worldwide is wasted every year. That's around 1.3 billion tons, enough to feed billions of people. Food gets tossed out at every stage, from farms to grocery stores, and even in our homes. Meanwhile, millions are starving and struggling to get by. 5. About 750 million people don't have access to electricity worldwide. Over 750 million people around the world still don't have access to electricity, living without basic modern comforts like lighting, heating, or refrigeration. This lack of power impacts their quality of life, ability to work, and access to education and healthcare. For these individuals, even simple tasks like cooking dinner, reading, or studying become huge challenges once the sun goes down. That's so many people missing out on basic conveniences we take for granted. 4. Over 8 million people are affected by the refugee crisis in Europe. The refugee crisis in Europe has been on the rise lately. The Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 triggered the largest displacement of people in Europe since World War II. As of April 2023, over 8 million Ukrainian refugees were recorded in Europe, with the majority seeking safety in neighboring countries. In the first half of 2024, the EU got over 500,000 asylum applications, totaling 513,000. And that's the highest it's been since the 2015-2016 refugee crisis. 3. More than 700,000 people die every year due to antibiotic-resistant infections. The overuse and misuse of antibiotics in both medicine and agriculture are driving the rise of superbugs that can't be treated. Antimicrobial resistance is a global health crisis that could push annual deaths to 10 million by 2050 if we don't develop new treatments. It's crazy how antibiotic resistance is turning into such a big issue. 2. Over 90% of the world's population breathes polluted air. The World Health Organization estimates that 9 out of 10 people around the world are breathing polluted air. Air pollution, which comes from industrial emissions, vehicle exhaust, and deforestation, is now a major cause of death and disease. It's connected to respiratory issues, heart disease, and strokes, affecting everyone, no matter their age or where they live. Even in richer countries, air quality is getting worse, and it's really important to remember that air pollution is a big threat to kids' health. 1. 37% of Americans don't have enough savings to cover a $400 emergency. And nearly a quarter, 21%, have no emergency savings at all. Whether it's a medical bill, a car repair, or an unexpected family cost, many people are living paycheck to paycheck without any financial cushion. In fact, 1 in 4 people had to dip into their emergency savings just to cover basic living expenses in the past year. The median emergency savings for Americans is only $600, which is really sad. Well, that's a wrap for today. But don't worry, that was just the tip of the iceberg. If you're craving more mind-blowing facts, be sure to check out our video on 25 facts that'll ruin your childhood memories. What if I told you that SpongeBob is linked to a nuclear fallout? Or that the roller coaster was invented for a very strange reason? Trust me, you don't want to miss it. So click on the link right here to watch now, and I'll catch you next time. Again, if you need to email me, mike@list25.com. To borrow the words of Fraser Crane, I'm listening.